Do you know someone in foster care? Have you been in foster care? Do you have a child in foster care? Are you a grandparent or relative caring for a family member? Are you considering becoming a foster parent? Then tune in every Wednesday at 3 p.m. to Fresh Start Today on WNOV 860 AM to engage in thought-provoking conversations with families and providers about child welfare services, both locally and nationally. Together, we can save our children.
Good afternoon. You're listening to Fresh Start Today. I am your host, Jermaine Reed, and my co-host is Mr. Sean Roby. We are delighted to be here, and we have a really important topic that we're going to be discussing today. Some of you may not be aware, but November is National Adoption Awareness Month. And so we would like to take a moment to acknowledge the love and the care that a number of individuals in this communities and communities abroad have done to provide for children on a more permanent basis, who have been in foster care and then also from the private adoption market. So we like to commend some of them folk, because not everybody's a good provider, as you know, but we just want to applaud those who's harder in the right place and are doing the right thing. So again, this is National Adoption Awareness Month. So a couple topics we're going to be exploring this month will be connected to adoption and its impact on children, families. And so we are excited that we have two very special guests in the studio with us today. We have Birdie. Miss Birdie, how you doing, Miss Birdie?
I am doing well, Jermaine. Thank you for having me on this show.
Oh, great. And we also have Kelly in the studio with us. These are two phenomenal women who have taken children into their homes and adopted them. You both are foster care providers, but you have moved a step further and you have adopted some children. And so we're going to talk about that. And the unique scenario situation here is that you all have adopted transracially. So mixed race, transracial, all that good stuff. So we're going to talk about the impact of transracial adoption on children's mental health and racial identity. So this is going to be a really good topic, So again, thank you all for taking time to come and participate. If the listening audience would like to join into this conversation, they can call 414-444-5250, 414-444-5250. And so thanks a lot, Keon and Tony. Thanks a lot. So we're going to get this ball rolling, and we're going to talk about transracial adoption, its impact on children and families. Some of you may not be aware in terms of how transracial adoption came about, so we're going to give a little backdrop information. And there's a couple things we're going to seek to accomplish in this conversation over the next 45 to 50 minutes. One is to explain how important racial and cultural identity formation is in children. Second, we would like to discuss what the Multi-Ethnic Placement Act is and its impact on children of color, particularly who are in the foster care system. Third, we'd like to explore the long-standing debate about whether love is enough and if transracial adoption is in the children's best interest. And then lastly, hopefully we'll be able to touch on what does race have to do with all this? Does being a black child in foster care in a public or private adoption market diminishes a child's value or prospect of finding a forever family? So again, welcome to my guests on Fresh Start Today. Now, let's set some ground rules here today. We just want to be very transparent, very honest, because this is a real issue. And a lot of times there are topics like transracial adoption and its impact on children and society's response to it, that we don't have a public space to have an honest dialogue about this topic. So today, hopefully we can just be fully honest. But if there's something that you don't feel comfortable with saying, well, then don't say anything at all. But if you say something, let's be honest in what we say, okay? Everybody in agreement? Okay. So now, transracial, mixed race, cross-cultural adoption and foster care placement is still, to some degree, an uncomfortable topic on both sides of the table. I mean, consider it's been about 50 to 60 years now. The stigma associated with black children being raised by white families and vice versa. Black families who are raising white children, black families who are raising Hispanic children, families who are raising white children, or raising black children, raising Asian children. We just all over the board with it. So, but there's still some degree of discomfort when thinking about that. So we're going to touch on that a little bit. For some folks, in their opinion, they feel that transracial adoption or parenting is unnatural. And so it'll be interesting to see what you all feel about that. And if we go back to, I think it was like around the 1958 through 1967, the first examples of international or intentional domestic transracial adoption occurred with the Indian Adoption Project. And that project was a collaboration between the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the Child Welfare League of America, and was designed to remove Native American children from their families on reservations in an effort to assimilate them into the dominant or mainstream society. And then by the 1960s, child advocacy groups in the United States and also in Canada initiated some programs that supported adopting orphaned African American children. And so these types of programs soon met a lot of resistance from the black community particularly, and from the Native American community. An example, the Evan B. Donaldson Adoption Institute, they were just really livid about this whole thing about removing black children out of the black community and then placing them with white families and adopting them. But it was the National Association of Black Social Workers that in 1972, they took a very public and firm stand against black children being removed from black homes and adopted by black families. In fact, in their position statement in 1972, they argued that transracial adoption was, in essence, a form of race and cultural genocide. I believe it was William T. Merritt, who was the president of the National Association of Black Social Workers at that time. His position was black children belong physically, psychologically, and culturally in black families in order that they receive the total sense of themselves and develop a sound projection of their future. And so we'll talk about whether or not people still feel that way, or have we moved, because we are becoming a more diverse society and community, but do people still have a problem with mixed race or transracial adoption and foster care placement? I know we have some callers on the line. Caller, if you can just hold on. We're just laying the foundation for this very important conversation, and we will get to your call shortly. So that was in 1972. So you had all of these people who were non-supporters of transracial adoption, and they began to create some awareness around it, rallying and protesting. And something happened from 1972. See, there were like 12,000 African-American children in the child welfare system nationally at that particular time. And 2,500 of them were adopted by white families between 1971, I think it was 1967 and 1971. And so then 1972 is when the National Association of Black Social Workers came out with their position statement, said this has got to stop. So then the Native American community began to oppose the removal of Native American children, placing them in boarding schools and not allowing them to celebrate their culture, embrace their culture, but then having to adopt. And so within a 7-year period of time, I think it was in 1978, a federal act or law was passed that was really important in the Native American community, and that's called the Indian Child Welfare Act, which pretty much put an end to Native American children being placed in non-Native American homes. And there were certain criteria and protocol around if you removed a Native American child from their family, what needs to happen before we can place a Native American child into a non-Native American home. Well, let's fast forward to 1994. President Bill Clinton is in office, and he signs what a lot of people refer to as the Multi-Ethnic Placement Act, MIPA. And this law prohibited the use of race, color, and natural origin of a child or a prospective parent in order to deny a particular foster care or an adoptive placement. 2 years later, in 96, the law was amended, making it illegal for any institution that received federal funds to consider race as a factor in the adoption process. So it's 20 years later now, so we're going to talk about whether or not placing African American children in white homes, placing white children in black homes, whether or not transracial adoption is in the best interest of children. You're listening to Fresh Start Today. I'm your host, Jermaine Reed, with Sean Roby. We'll be right back after this message.
Did you know that black children represent 67% of our local foster care community, according to the Department of Children and Families' most recent annual report? Many of these children are not only removed from their parents and siblings, but are placed in families, schools, and neighborhoods that do not reflect or honor their race, culture, or heritage. I was talking to some children who are in foster care the other day, and they said this traumatic experience often leaves them feeling sad, scared, and lonely. Black children and youth do matter. You can help the most vulnerable population of children in our community by becoming a licensed, culturally responsive foster parent with Fresh Start Family Services. Come learn more at our Foster Care Recruitment Fair on November the 7th, 2015 at 10 a.m. at Fresh Start Administrative Office, 1720 West Flores Avenue, Suite 200. For more information, call 414-351-1100. That's 414-351-1100. Foster the future. Foster a child.
Good afternoon. You're listening to Fresh Start Today. I'm your host, Jermaine Reed, along with Sean Roby, and we have two guests in the studio. We're talking about the impact of transracial adoption on children's mental health and racial identity. And so what we know is that black children enter the foster care system at an alarming rate and are more likely to stay in the system longer, and they're the least likely to be adopted out of the system. We know that according to a study in the California Institute of Technology, New York University, and London School of Economics, the adoption market in America is $2 to $3 billion annually. In private adoption, some parents are willing or were willing to pay $16,000 more for a girl than for a boy, but $38,000 more for a non-African American baby. Racial prejudice and discrimination exist in the world of child welfare America. We know that Asian children have a higher rate of adoption than their counterparts, and we also know that potential black parents have been discriminated against during the adoption screening process, which creates some challenges for children who are stuck in the system. So today we're talking about transracial adoption, and we want to first define, Mr. Roby, you can share with us, what is transracial adoption?
Well, when you look at transracial adoption or foster care, it's basically the joining of racially different parents and children together in a family unit, and it can be in a variety of circumstances where it could be foster care, adoption, whether formal or informal, stepchildren, interracial marriages.
So it's really like a blended family.
It's basically a blended family
Okay.
on many levels.
Okay. Now, how important is for children to develop a healthy racial identity? Because that's what's at the crux of this whole argument of the position of the Evan B. Donaldson Adoption Institute and organizations like the National Association of Black Social Workers is about transracial adoption not being good for the identity, racial, and cultural development of children. So what is racial identity? How important is that?
I think we have to kind of take a step back first. When you talk about healthy racial identity, we know when we talk about healthy, when you're healthy, you got a clean bill of health, things like that. Your cholesterol is good. Everything is going great. But in terms of identity, when you talk about identity, we have to look at a few different things. Identity development, it starts at birth and it goes through your adolescence, and that's the more prominent time for it, but then it goes throughout the duration of your life.
Okay, so it's a lifelong process.
It's a lifelong process, absolutely. And one of the key factors with that in your development is asking yourself, who am I?
And that's what Whitney was just thinking about. You know, if I fail, if I see, at least I live as I believe. No matter what you take from me, you can't take away my dignity. It's about who you are. And that is the one question I think that all of us have to ask ourselves, whether we are children, adults, in foster care, not in foster care, adopted, not adopted, is finding out who we are. And so this lifelong process, this identity, this development process is something that takes time.
Right.
Now, there was a psychologist by the name of, and some folk listening today will recognize his name, Eric Erickson. And what he felt in terms of identity formation is that it involved a simultaneous reflection and observation, a process that takes place on all levels of your mental functioning, in which the individual consistently or constantly is asking the question, how do people perceive me? How do I see myself? And so that is about what the whole identity development or formation process entails. But he also felt that individual characteristics like family dynamics, historical factors, and social and political context also impact identity development. And so when we talk about this today, I want to talk about these children who are placed in transracial homes. Birdie and Kelly.
Well, you know what? I think before you go there, I think when we talk about healthy racial identities, we have to kind of keep in mind, particularly for children, healthy cultural identities.
That is deeper
Right.
or more important
Right.
than, per se, racial, because race is something that was manufactured and
Right. And predominantly more so in the U.S. in like the 18th century to kind of
class folk, to
separate
categorize, superior versus inferior. Okay.
And superior.
So,
Now,
so I agree.
But when we talk about that cultural identity aspect, it's more so your sense of belongingness, your purpose, the group that you associate with, the people that you grow up with, church,
Got that.
et cetera.
All right. So, yes. Why did you all, tell us who you are first, and how many children you've adopted, or?
So, my name is Birdie Kauser, and I have adopted 2 Caucasian boys. Currently, they are 15 and 19 years old.
Really?
Wow.
Yes, 2. I forgot.
Yes.
Yeah, 2. Well, okay. 15 and 19, they're Caucasian.
Yes.
And you're African American.
Yes.
Okay. And Kelly, what about you?
I have adopted 4 African American children, ages 8, 7, 4, and 3.
8, 7, 4, and 3. So they probably keep you busy. 8, 7, 4, and
Yes.
3. Okay, so talk to us a little bit. What has that experience been like to adopt a child from your different race? What went into your consideration of adopting transracially? Why did you choose to adopt transracially?
Well, for me, it wasn't the fact that it was a transracial adoption.
Okay.
These were 2 children that were placed in my home at the time, and these children needed a home. So I never went into this placement thinking that, oh my God, I want to adopt some Caucasian children. It was that the children were placed in my home at the time, and it was just right. They asked me, did I want to adopt the boys after they had been there for a certain amount of time? Their family wasn't coming forward to be with the children or even trying to get with the children. So it just felt right. So for me,
right.
it wasn't the fact that they were Caucasian. It was just the fact that I was available at that point in time.
Now, for folks in the national data that says that black children enter into the foster care system in some jurisdictions at a rate of like 2.5 times versus their counterpart, white children. Okay. And then in communities like this, I don't have the exact statistics, but I do know that 67% of the children families that were served by our local child welfare community in 2013, according to the Department of Children and Families, that those are black children and families. And we know that nationally, black children stay in the system longer and they exit the system longer. Has anyone ever asked you, why would you adopt a white child when there's so many black children who are in need of a loving, supportive, stable home?
Actually, that question did come up. I had multiple people ask me why I did adopt Caucasian children versus African American children. And again, for me, it's the same premise. The children that were placed in my home at that time, it was just the right time for them and the right time for me. And so we both took advantage of that situation, and me being available and say, well, you know, since I am a current foster parent, I'm continuing to be a foster parent, then why not? So for me, I never looked at it as a race thing.
Gotcha.
I looked at it as these children needing a forever home.
A forever home. Okay, great. What about you, Kelly? I mean, you've adopted 4 phenomenal African-American children, and talk about that experience. What went into your decision-making? Why did you choose to adopt African-American children?
My story is similar. I didn't pre-plan to adopt African American children. They were placed in my home, and I fell in love. And the time was right. Everything worked out.
Okay.
It wasn't a color decision or
It wasn't race based.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so for you it was love based. It was an opportunity.
Yes.
You all felt that you had something to offer these children. So let's talk about, in your parenting experience of a child from a different culture or race, what are some things that you have to take in consideration when it comes to caring for them to make sure that they have a total sense or a healthy sense of who they are?
Well, for me, I think just maintaining that diverse atmosphere for the children.
Okay.
And I think for our family, it was important to maintain the status quo. My children went to school in a diverse academic environment. My family is made up of very different people, ethnicities,
Okay.
and we just are all one big melting pot, as America is. And so I think it's important to just understand that as long as we make sure we have those opportunities available for the children, as far as the children being able to know who they are culturally, and I think it should be no problem. I'm glad I was able to do that for the kids, just having those opportunities available and exposing them to their own culture.
Okay. Oh, same with you. Okay. Kelly's a little bashful today, but we're gonna get through this. It's okay.
And you know what? I think before you go any further, again, you started off taking hats off and giving kudos to providers, adoption, whether private or public. And I think that is important to the vitality of any society. Having culturally sensitive and understanding providers available to be there for kids.
And I think that's key, is culturally sensitive, culturally responsive parents that can meet the needs of children who do not share the same racial makeup or ethnic backup as they do. But when we look at terms like, when we say like black and we say white, those, in my opinion, those are homogenous terms, because what does black mean? What does white mean? You know, and these children are white children. They're Irish. They're Irish from Irish descent. They're German. They're Polish. You know, African American. They may be a variety of places that they come from. And so, in your parenting, do you see them as an Irish child? And what is it about the Irish culture, or what is it about the German culture that you think is important for them to know? How do you go about connecting them, keeping those cultural connections alive?
Well, I think, again, for me, it's just making sure that they have those opportunities. There are different activities at school that the kids can participate in. And for me, I allow my children to have a relationship with their biological family. Okay, the grandmother, she reached out to me and she wanted that relationship with the boy, so I allowed it. And then that also helped me to engage the boys in what their cultural and their ethnic identities are.
Okay. Well, let me ask you something in terms of, because you both mentioned that at one point you were a foster parent, and with domestic adoptions, a lot of the children who are adopted in the U.S., they kind of matriculate from a foster care track to an adoption track. And so you all had the pleasure and experience of living with these children, working with these children, developing a relationship with these children before actually adopting these children. Now, I just had a kid placed in my home not long ago, and within 2 weeks I was asked, would you like to adopt this kid? Not really knowing the kid, not really having a relationship with the kid. Would you like to adopt? When you all decided to adopt these children, what type of preparation and training and support did you all receive on the front end?
As far as culturally?
Well, culturally, or preparation to prepare you to be able to respond to the very unique needs and racial, ethnic, cultural needs of the children that were placed in your care.
I don't feel that I received much training, if any, on that specific topic. We've just used resources along the way.
Along the way, were they appointed resources, designated resources, or were they just something you just happened upon and you got these resources?
Researched it myself, figured things out along the way. But I don't feel that there were specific trainings that prepared me.
Well, I know there's a training across the U.S. that a lot of folks do, and I know they offer it here in the state of Wisconsin. That's how to care for the African American child's hair.
Yes, that is offered through
through a local organization. So do you think there is a need to go beyond just
Hair.
how to take care of African American children's hair?
Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, and so for you, adopting 4 African American children, are there some trainings that you think, wow, I wish I could have gotten this on the front end because of whatever experiences you've encountered on the back end?
I haven't really come across any yet. I come from a multicultural family, so I'm exposed. Hair, I've, asked along the way.
Okay. Birdie, what about you? What would that preparation look like for you?
As a matter of fact, I would have to agree with the other guest on the show today. There was not much preparation that was offered. And so being the person that I am a researcher.
Okay.
I am an individual that seeks out more information.
Okay.
So that's what I did on my end. Fortunately, I don't have to worry about hair because I have boys.
So you just cut it on off.
Yeah, just cut it off. Even myself.
But I think that training is important because that connects to how children see themselves. I remember a young lady, I promise you, she came from somewhere like Columbus, Wisconsin, somewhere, African-American young lady, and she had been transitioned out of a home up there. She was fighting or whatever, but in the trainings that I often do, I would show a picture of what her hair looked like the day she arrived at our agency, and it was very clear to me what the problem was. So I'm not sure what the therapist diagnosed her with and whatever, but clearly her hair was matted, it hadn't been washed or cleaned, or I don't know what was in there, but
Right.
surely that affected her when children were making fun of her. And so when we look at, we have social workers and folks who visit these homes, oversee this, surely somebody had to see that this girl was in total disarray. I mean, and some folk might say that is neglectful parenting on some level. So you said you don't have to worry about it because you can cut off all of his hair and chop it, cut it down, whatever. And you said that you had other resources that you were able to tap into that can help you with grooming issues that are specific to African American children. What about with skincare? Is there any special skincare that you all had to learn along the way?
No, not for me, not at all. But I wanted to kind of get back to the point that you had before. I also think that it starts with the social workers. They have to be trained properly as well.
Okay.
They are not very culturally sensitive to the needs of the children placed in homes today.
Do you think that because there's such a need for homes until we just find anybody to take this kid, that trumps education, it trumps all these other issues that impact these children's lives? We just need somebody that's going to feed them, clothe them, and shelter them.
Yes.
But there's something, at times, and of course that's not everyone, but at times. So we need to put more or advocate that there needs to be more emphasis placed on cultural diversity, cultural responsive, cultural competency training for the case managers and service providers.
I also think that it's important to have more African American social workers in the field. I think that's going to be a huge help, tremendous help to the field of social work and helping placing the children in these homes, because you get most Caucasian individuals. I mean, y'all done got me started now.
Okay, talk. Speak.
Welcome.
Fresh start today.
Hi.
You need more African American individuals who can identify with the children that are being placed in the home, especially here in Milwaukee. And I can attest to the unsurmountable amount of Caucasian workers that have been to my home and didn't understand my culture and judged me.
And do you think that translates into their practice, into the documentation and their response to you? It's like, so that is an area that we need to advocate for, see that they develop. Because I would take it a step further. I don't think it's just about having more African Americans as case managers. I think there needs to be more African American administrators.
Absolutely.
And I do think that the administration and the service provision should reflect the population that is being served.
Absolutely.
And I think that makes a huge difference. And it's not to say that white folk or Hispanic folk or Asian folk can't provide a valuable service to black children and black families. But I think a huge problem here in the state of Wisconsin, in this particular part of the state, is we don't even feel comfortable having the conversation about race and racism and culture. And we won't be able to change this landscape until we actually have that courageous conversation. You're listening to Fresh Start today on WNOV, The Voice. I'm your host, Jermaine Reed, and we're talking about the impact of transracial adoption on children's mental health and racial identity. Tune in. We'll be right back.
When the day that lies ahead of me seemed impossible to face, and when someone else instead of me always seems to know the way, then I look at you and the world's all right with me.
Did you know that black children represent 67% of our local foster care community, according to the Department of Children and Families' most recent annual report? Many of these children are not only removed from their parents and siblings, but are placed in families, schools, and neighborhoods that do not reflect or honor their race, culture, or heritage. I was talking to some children who are in foster care the other day, and they said this traumatic experience often leaves them feeling sad, scared, and lonely. Black children and youth do matter. You can help the most vulnerable population of children in our community by becoming a licensed, culturally responsible foster parent with Fresh Start Family Services. Come learn more at our foster care recruitment fair on November the 7th, 2015 at 10 a.m. at Fresh Start Administrative Office, 1720 West Florence Avenue, Suite 200. For more information, call 414-351-1100. That's 414-351-1100. Foster the future. Foster a child.
Good afternoon. You're listening to Fresh Start today. You're tuned in to, I'm your host, Jermaine Reed, and I have some guests in the studio. We have Birdie and Kelly, and we have co-host Sean Robin. We're talking about the impact of transracial adoption on children. And it's not just adoption, but it's about foster care placement. And, Ms. Cowser, you brought up a very, very powerful point offline where you're talking about, why don't you share that point?
Well, what I was sharing, when we were at commercial was that I think it's important for us to mimic or display the kind of people that are being placed in the homes. And those are the kind of the people that we need to see are the ones. Let me get my thought together. Hold on a second. The individuals that are being placed in homes today, so more African-American children are being placed, but who are the people that are placing those children are mostly Caucasian. So I think the fabric of that needs to be turned around, and we need more African-American social workers, and the kids need to see more people that look like them. They're confused. They don't understand what's going on because all they see is this white face that comes and takes them out of the home, and then the white face is trying to tell the black family how to parent. But
there's something about assimilation and acculturation where some parents expect, and maybe even case managers, social workers, child welfare administrators expect that children who are adopted or placed transracially, that they have to, in a sense, adopt the culture of the family or the home that they're living in, and in doing so, those children risk losing a part of who they are. And one thing that the Evan B. Donaldson Adoption Institute, their concern was that for African American children who are placed in transracial homes, that they will lose a sense of who they are, but that they may even look down on other African Americans or become afraid of other African Americans, especially if the parents and the case managers and people don't celebrate who they are and where they come from. Caller, you are listening to Caller. You on Fresh Start today? You have a brief question or comment?
So I do.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
First of all, I'd like to say that nothing has come up that I heard yet about Birdie's background in the military, which qualified her more for being involved with a multiracial situation, because she spent 16 years as an officer in the United States Army, and she has been exposed to multiple cultures throughout her life and adult life.
Okay.
That made her more qualified to deal with any child. And it's not about the race of the child. It's about the people who are the caregivers, giving these children love and exposing them to the real world because they're not going to live in a vacuum. They're going to live in a world with multiple people of all different races, and they need to be able to adjust to that no matter what their situation is.
So do you think part of doing that or helping these children adjust is to have a conversation about race, racism, culture, ethnicity?
Most definitely.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, thanks a lot, because it sounds like you know Ms. Collison.
I do, and I've coached high school sports in this state for 48 years, and I work with multiple children from multiple areas, and none of it is about race.
Got you.
Let me give a shout out. Hey, Mr. Holmes.
Is that Al Holmes? My father's house. How you doing, Mr. Holmes? Thank you for tuning in.
Good. I love you.
All right. Thanks for tuning in to Fresh Start Today, sir, and all the work you're doing in the community.
Thank you.
Now, you know what? I think, as Mr. Holmes mentioned, and you as well, when you talk about assimilation versus acculturation, and acculturation, just so everybody can know the difference, acculturation is the absorption of another group's norms, but then acculturation is understanding and borrowing another group's norms, but also holding on to your own traditions and belongingness. So we also want to make sure that, and that's what Mr. Holmes spoke of, is keeping your identity and knowing who you are.
But, you know, he also mentioned, and listen, if you want to join this conversation, you can call 414-444-5250. We have about 10 more minutes to this segment, 414-444-5250. Something that Mr. Holmes also made reference to is racial inculcation. And basically that is teaching the coping skills to help children deal effectively with racism and discrimination.
Absolutely.
Do you all have any concerns as your children grow? Let's just say Johnny is 5 months old. Do you think that society responds differently to Johnny at 5 months versus 5 years versus 15 years old? And particularly for you, Kelly, I mean, having African-American male children, parenting them, are you concerned in terms of how society will respond to them? And are you concerned about how you would teach them or train them or work with them to understand how to navigate?
Well, I do have a fear of what the future holds, but I try to incorporate other people to help step in.
Okay.
I definitely have noticed an issue with schools. My children go to a multicultural school.
Okay.
And kids often ask my children why their mother is a different color than them. And that's just now coming to our home, so it is a concern.
So how do you think you deal with it, or how have you dealt with it? And
well, I try to discuss our skin color and our backgrounds, but my children don't see color. They don't see me as being white.
They see mom.
They just see mom.
Right.
That's
Okay.
all right.
And we're all a different shade in our house, so it's not really, it's hard to explain it to them because
Okay.
they're not accepting that yet.
so have you all, I mean, Kelly, I'm sorry, Bertie, have you had a moment, a transracial adoption moment where someone looks at, oh, y'all don't match, you know, and I'm not being loose with that, but you know, say, oh, you're dark complected, this person is Caucasian, what's going on here? That must be your foster child, or have you had one of those moments, and how did you deal with it? Or how did you
Well,
help your child deal with it?
My children are older.
Okay.
So they understand a lot more, and they're very super laid back kids, and as long as they got something to eat and they play their video games, they really
They
don't
cool.
care about
All
you
that
know,
other stuff.
the surroundings. The only challenges that we have faced is like when we're out in the community and say we might be at a store or something, and the children may be with me, and I just get a lot of dirty looks. The stares, and it's really, it used to be very like, I was kind of disheartened by it, but as time has gone on, it's okay, and I understand that people just don't understand, because then I have to also look at my own biases, because when I see a Caucasian person with black children, I said, they must be their foster kids, so then I have to be transparent with that and make sure that I'm not prejudging those individuals as well.
Wow.
That's critical in itself, because it's so many people from the outside looking in who really don't understand all of the fabric and the underworkings of foster care. And again, hats off to you all, because you all have taken that ultimate step to make sure that these kids have safe upbringings, nurturing environments, and that's so vital.
So we talked about service delivery, people who are placing these children. Do you all think that you'll continue to adopt or more children?
Personally, for me, I'm not sure at this time that adoption is the option for me because I'm waiting on the Lord to bless me, and so He's going to probably have me have my own children. So, but I think that for individuals who want to adopt, they definitely should look into it, and it might be something for them.
Okay, with regards to children and adoptions or children from a different race that you care for. On the post-adoption side, what does that support look like?
The post-adoption side for me is no support at all.
Mm-hmm. And why would you say that?
Services end the moment you sign on that court document. When they're foster children, they have all the services available to them and a team readily available to help, make sure they're receiving those services. But once you adopt, it's just you and your kids.
And I would have to say, for me, post-adoption has been okay. It's kind of been in the middle.
Okay.
Because I have reached out to the adoption
Coalition.
resources
Okay.
of Wisconsin, and they have given me good information. I'm able to use their lending library. So I think for that part of it, it worked out for me. Now, I didn't need the services so much that they had prior to being adopted. So I found that it was okay for me.
Okay. So as it relates to this, we're preparing ourselves to close this conversation. Is there something around adoption that has not been said that you think is really important to talk about? And even foster care, from the public side, foster care and adoption kind of like are twins. They go hand in hand. So, foster care precedes adoption. So is there any type of feedback or recommendations or, thoughts that you have around those two issues that we have not touched on in this conversation?
Well, I would say for me, cans. That will be number one.
And for CANS, what is for CANS?
Those who
People are
don't
not
know about
familiar.
That is a
Child adolescent needs.
and strengths assessment tool.
Right, and I like it for the clinical evaluation of children, but for other purposes, I think that it has no clinical basis. It's not therapeutic in nature at all, and I just think that it was something developed for not even this area that we live in today.
Right.
It's
They've
not for
modified it.
Wisconsin.
Yeah, right.
Right, so I would say that would be one of my recommendations, and I also think that we need to celebrate foster parents more and not be so hard on foster parents. I don't think they really get the due that they deserve and the credit that they deserve, because they really are the crux. They really are the backbone of this society.
But you know what? I also think, and I appreciate that, and I agree with that. But I also think that in Child Welfare America, and also in this state, that we have to really look at how much do we support family preservation. What are we doing to help keep children in their families of origin? Or is there a greater emphasis on removal and termination of parental rights, and then adopting those children out, and then forgetting about them?
Jermaine, I think that that's another reason why I mentioned earlier about having more African Americans to be in child welfare, is because when those IA workers come out to the home.
And IA is initial assessment
workers. I used to be a social worker back in the day.
Really?
Yeah, I was a safety services caseworker
You've been
for
busy.
Innovative. Absolutely.
What?
And so I know that when they would go out to those homes, because that family didn't look like them, because they wasn't raised how that worker was raised.
Prejudice and assumptions.
Absolutely.
Wow.
So they would take those children out of the home, and we're talking about poor people. They don't have any resources. They can't just go and say, you know what, these are my rights. They don't know.
Right.
And nobody was there to advocate for them. So
And
that's the problem.
So, and along with that, then we're saying to some degree that there are children who are removed from their families that should have never been removed from their families, and in some cases those children end up being adopted away, even to loving, caring providers like yourselves. But when you look at the situation for what it is, in some of these cases those children didn't have to be removed.
Right.
The families just needed support.
Right. And Bertie
Yeah.
mentioned poverty, and poverty is not a reason for children to be removed.
Absolutely.
So that's something critical to keep in mind as
Very
well.
critical.
Well, it's not supposed to be.
But it is.
Okay.
If we're being honest with
Right.
ourselves
No,
and
we're
we're
being
being
honest.
transparent,
Very
then it
much so.
absolutely is a reason why the children are being taken out of the homes.
Right. Well, listen, you're listening to Fresh Start today. We're going to go to break. And what we're going to do is we have, I don't know what it is, 2 tickets to.
We got 2 tickets to Black Ernie. It's going to be a comedy show this November 6th. So is that
That's Friday. And so if you want to be caller number 10, you can call right now and win those 2 tickets to see Black Ernie at the comedy. Was it Big Easy?
At the Big
All right,
Easy.
you're listening to Fresh Start Today. We'll be right back after this break.
Did you know that Black children represent 67% of our local foster care community, according to the Department of Children and Families' most recent annual report? Many of these children are not only removed from their parents and siblings, but are placed in families, schools, and neighborhoods that do not reflect or honor their race, culture, or heritage. I was talking to some children who were in foster care the other day, and they said this traumatic experience often leaves them feeling sad, scared, and lonely. Black children and youth do matter. You can help the most vulnerable population of children in our community by becoming a licensed, culturally responsible foster parent with Fresh Start Family Services. Come learn more at our foster care recruitment fair on November the 7th, 2015 at 10 a.m. at Fresh Start Administrative Office, 1720 West Flores Avenue, Suite 200. For more information, call 414-351-1100. That's 414-351-1100. Foster the future. Foster a child.
You're listening to Fresh Start Today. This is Jermaine Reed and Sean Roby and our guests, Birdie and Kelly. And we're talking about the impact of transracial adoption on children's mental health and racial identity. Now, a question came up on break in regards to how do you all deal with the biological, the birth family of your adopted children? Have you had good experiences or not so good experience? And when you deal with these challenges, how do you deal with these challenges?
Or is there any relationship?
Yeah, or is there any relationship?
For me, my children do have a relationship with their birth family, and it started off being really good, and it started to go south a little bit. But I think that's only because the children, they're bigger now, so they can pretty much take care of themselves. The family don't have to take care of them, and so they wanted to now be in the children's life.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
When I did all the work.
For me, I had a positive situation turn negative. The parent was involved, and after a while, she decided she was ready to have the child back and threatened to keep the kid. And so we had to sever the relationship. I've reached out for other relatives, but have had no success.
All right, we have a caller on Fresh Start Today. Caller, do you have a brief question and comment related to this topic?
Yeah, I do. This is Kathy. I don't have any children of my own, although most people are shocked when they say I make a good everything, really, social worker for adults and children. But for your foster care program, I'd like to know what age were these children when they received the children in their home? And then the other thing is that it's my identity crisis. I have a good family friend. Mom died. Mom was black, dad was white. And mom died, had cancer. The kids are kind of little still. And they asked some of us African-American women and men to stay in the kids' lives because we're the mom's friend. And so they keep up with both identities of both families because the black side of the family, that girl's parents never stepped up to the plate, although it was a small family. They were very well-off people, too, but they never stepped up to the plate as a grandparent or grandma. So the dad asked us to stay in the kids' life so they can know, both cultures and stuff like that. And, of course, we have, and when these kids, they just light up, and we try to maintain different things that the dad may not do with them, although he's very culture diverse more than some of us are. So just wondering, with these kids, what age did they get those children? Did they had
All right, what age do you when you receive your children?
My boys came to me, they were 7 and 11.
And at what age did you adopt them?
9 and 13.
At 9 and 13, so they've been a couple years. What about you?
2 of mine came near birth, and 2 of them were about 8 months old.
And how long did it take before you adopted them?
A couple years.
A couple years?
All
Okay.
of them.
Well, listen, this has been a great conversation. Hopefully it was informative. We do appreciate you all being on the show. Now, we're going to have part 2 of this show, but it's going to be on November the 18th because we're going to have a pre-recorded show next week because we are going to be in some training. But want to let you know that we'll have a special guest here, which will be the president of the National Association of Black Social Workers, Tony Oliver will be here, and she will kind of talk about their position on black children remaining in black families and communities. And so we'll learn a little bit more about that on November the 18th. So again, thank you for tuning into Fresh Start today, and we look forward to talking with you in the future. And if you care to become a licensed, culturally responsive foster care provider for children who are placed in the system for a number of reasons. We certainly would like to invite you to call Fresh Start Family Services at 414-351-1100. Actually, this weekend on Saturday at 10 o'clock a.m., we have a recruitment fair from 10 to 11, 1720 West Flores Avenue, Suite 200. So feel free to give us a call if you would like to be a part of that recruitment fair and or apply to become a culturally responsive foster parent for Fresh Start Family Services. Thank you. Be well and be safe.